Good morning, yogis. Welcome to the first day of 5 for your Beginner's Yoga Challenge, a collaboration between FloWithGrace Yoga and a conscious community. I'm really excited for this one because it kind of makes yoga more accessible for anyone who is thinking about trying it. And I know going to a class when you've never been before can be quite daunting. And so my goal for this challenge is for everyone to now have an understanding of some basic yoga postures that you can see in a class, so you can feel more comfortable attending classes at a studio, at a gym, or even online, and have some better understanding of what the pose is, some benefits of it, and also how to modify them for your own body and for your own practice. You're not going to need anything but a mat or a soft place to practice, maybe some water, and when you're ready, we'll meet back on your mat and get started. So to start the first day of our yoga challenge, we're going to be going over our resting postures. These are postures that you can take any time during a class if you need a moment to come back to your breath, to calm yourself, and to kind of regain control over your practice, because we never want our practice to be something that is too daunting to approach, and we don't want it to be something that is too strenuous where it's hard for us to get through the whole practice. We want it to be something that our bodies are ready for, and gradually over time we can increase length of time in postures, maybe add in some more flows. And so we always want to start where we are. So resting postures are a great way. If you're in the class, you can always come down to them. You can always come back to your resting postures, recollect yourself, and then rejoin the class when you're ready. This is very common in yoga, and you'll see people all the time just kind of drop into a little egg shape, and that's one of the ones we're going to go over as child's pose. So without further ado, we're going to start with child's pose. There's two versions of this. So in the child's pose, we can have our knees together and we sit back onto our heels. Here you can add a blanket behind the knees or underneath the ankles if there's any tension, or if it's a little bit too hard of a floor, the mat's maybe not thick enough. That adds a little bit of comfort for this posture. Then you're going to start to walk your hands out in front of you as you start to fold over your thighs. And it's okay, this may not be comfortable for you. We'll go on to the other variation in a moment. Give it a try, and by all means, you can always come out of a pose if you ever feel pinching, cramping, or if it's just something your body does not want to do. So you're going to lower down. Rest your head towards the floor. You can have your arms extended out, or you can bring them alongside you, finding that little egg shape. Take a big, deep breath. And then when you're ready, coming back up to a seated position. So that's one way that you can practice a child's pose, and that is a pose you can come down to at any point during class. Another variation of that, which may be more comfortable for you if you found that laying your torso on your thighs was a bit too much, or maybe just didn't work for you, is you can bring the knees out just about as wide as the mat. The big toes are going to stay touching together, and then once again you're going to walk your hands out in front and then start to lower down. Take a few breaths, and then slowly walk yourself back up. So that's a second variation of child's pose. There are different reasons why we might put that in a sequence as teachers if we're trying to get certain stretches, certain parts of the body moving. But as a resting posture, whichever one is more comfortable is the better option for you. So those are the two variations of child's pose that are really nice to kind of recollect yourself in a class. Another one is downward facing dog. When we go into this, bear with me because a lot of people are going to be like, this is not a rest pose. And it is a very active posture when you're doing it in a very engaged way. But if you need a minute to just recollect your breath, but you don't necessarily need some physical rest, you can use downward facing dog, which comes up quite often in sequences, to take that extra second to just kind of come back and slow your breathing back to its natural rhythm. And so to get into that one, what you're going to do is start in a tabletop position. So our knees are stacked underneath our hips, and our hands are underneath our shoulders as so. And then from here, you're going to tuck your toes under, and you're just going to press into your toes and lift your knees off and all the way back. You might need to adjust by walking your hands out slightly. And then from here, the goal is to get the heels down towards the mat, but it's okay if they don't touch. And then we also want to press into the hands, elevate our shoulders towards our ears, and push our chest back towards our thighs. And that's okay. This can be very intense for the hamstrings and everything running through the back line of the body. It's possible as well to bend the knees and then press into the hands and push back. So by bending the knees, we're going to alleviate some of the stretch and intensity through our hamstrings, but we still want to get that opening through the chest and through the front body. And so by bending the knees, it's a better option to keep pushing through the floor with your hands. It's going to protect your wrists, protect your shoulder joint as well, rather than trying to keep the legs straight, where we might also damage the hamstrings. So those are our 3 resting postures we're going to go over. So at any point during our last session together this week, if you need to find one of those postures to recollect yourself, by all means take that time for yourself. Awesome. Cool. Okay, yogis, so now we're going to move on to the second part of our first day, which is our warming sequence. So in yoga, we have something called sun salutations. And this is commonly what teachers will use to get us to warm our bodies in preparation for the rest of the sequence. Because if we're going to be moving around, we want to make sure our muscles and everything is ready for that movement. And so we're going to go over sun salutations A. Surya Namaskar is what we call it, but sun salutations works just as well. This is one of the most basic warming sequences and the most common that you'll see in a beginner's yoga class. So we're going to go over a few postures on their own, and then we'll bring them all together and do 1 or 2 flows together to end our day. So to start, we'll find a standing position. So I'm going to stand in the middle of the mat just for the video's purposes. However, usually you would find yourself standing at the top of your mat as such. So standing at the top of the mat or the middle, if you want to join with me here, we're going to start with our first posture, which is Tadasana or mountain pose. So all we're doing is, it looks like we're just standing here, but it's going to be very active. So we're activating all types of little muscles within our body to help keep this kind of energized and the way that we want it to be. So we're going to start by pressing into our heels, lifting our toes off of the mat, and spread your toes as wide as you can, and then place them back down. And then we're going to do is lift our heels off, come onto our toes, and then back down. So this is what we call rooting down all 4 corners of the feet. So we want both sides of the heels equally pushing into the mat, as well as both sides of the balls of our feet. So our pinky toe side and our big toe side are equally distributing weight, pardon me. Then from here, we're gonna have a slight engagement through our quads, just enough to lift the kneecaps slightly. And then we're gonna bring our shoulders up, roll them back, nice proud. Our palms are gonna spin to face forward, core slightly engaged. And we're pressing our fingers wide. So even in our hands, there's lots of energy, and we just allow everything to be firm, tall, proud, and strong. You can close the eyes here and take a few breaths just to see how this feels in your body. This is another great posture. If you're in a standing sequence in a class and you don't feel comfortable coming down to a child's pose, you can feel free to stand here, close your eyes, and just breathe as you are right now. Beautiful. So that's posture number 1. The next posture we're going to look at is a forward fold. There is a transition in a sun salutation to get us there from our Tadasana, but we're just going to break down the postures first. So in our forward fold, what we want to do is have the same foundation, nice strong core here. Quads are engaged, all 4 corners of the feet root down, and then you can bring your hands to your hips for this, just so that you can see how it feels. And I'm going to exaggerate the movement so that you have a visual perspective of it. Usually when people forward fold is they start to round at the back and then kind of fold like this. So what happens is their tailbone is tucked under and we're not really stretching much of the legs, which is more of the goal here. Instead, what's happening is you're stretching through your back, and that might feel really good. If that feels great, just stick with that. It's fine if that's where you need the stretch. But if we're going to be picky about it, what you want to do, and if you have your hands on your hips, you can use your fingers to help guide your hips. So you want to have a tilt in your pelvis here. So you have kind of a sassy bum, as we call it. Nice sassy bum as you push your chest forward. So instead of leading with your head and rounding, you're going to lead with your heart and let your heart come down towards the floor. And it's okay if this is as far as it goes, if this is as far as it goes. Even if just having that tilt in the pelvis, you feel stretched through the legs, stop wherever you need to stop. Okay? To come further down, you can have a slight bend in the knees, and this is totally okay. We would rather have the stretch be more gentle than to stretch with straight legs and push it and maybe have a micro tear in your hamstring by the end of the class. This is not what we want to do. So we want to be gentle with ourselves, maybe take a bend in the knees, tilt at the pelvis, and then we can start to lead with the heart. And this might be where we are. If this is your forward fold, if this is your forward fold, either way is perfect as long as you feel the stretch and the lengthening through the back side of the body. This is all we want. All right, so now we have our forward fold. Then we have another transition, and we're gonna end up stepping back to plank. So we're gonna break plank pose down now. Don't worry, I will explain everything before we get into the posture, so you're not gonna be sitting there with arms shaking, waiting for me to stop talking. So basic foundations of our plank pose. So our hands are under our shoulders. We want to press into the mat actively, enough to slightly round through our upper back. So you can see here, usually what happens with plank, even if we have a nice strong core, is we let our chest drop slightly, our ribs puff out at the front, and we're not really activating through our shoulders as much as we should be, which can endanger our shoulder girdle. So what we want to do is protect ourselves, push into the mat, slight round through the upper back, and see what happens with my front ribs is they start to come in. Everything is nice and tight and together. All right, so to start, we'll find our tabletop once again. And then from here, we'll step one foot out, tuck the toes, and then step the other one out to meet it. If this is too intense, you can bring the knees down. Just make sure that when the knees are down, you're not in a table position. So you don't want the knees underneath your hips. If that is your modification, you'd want to walk them out. So you're nice and strong. Either way is fine. Knees down or up. Okay? So this is what your plank should look or feel like. Either variation. And that is the third posture. The next one is part of the transition into the 2 postures to come last. So we're going to cover it, and again I'm going to go quickly because we don't want to be holding it forever. It is a very intense part of the sequence. It's called the chaturanga, so it's like a yogi push-up. So basically from our plank, and I'll show you with my knees down, this is perfectly okay. So if your knees are down, and this is how you want to find your chaturanga, you're going to hug your elbows in and come all the way down to the mat. All right, so that can be your chaturanga, and that's totally fine. That's a modified version of it, but if that's where you are and that's how you want to practice, that is perfect. The other variation is from a high plank. So knees are up, and then if your knees are up, the way you want to lower, again, hug the elbows in, and you want to lower halfway. So this is your chaturanga here. All right, yes, so give that a try, see how it feels in your body. Try both out. Even if your knees are down, try it with your knees up and see how it feels. You might surprise yourself. The next pose comes after our chaturanga, which is two variations again. So if your knees are down and you came all the way down onto the mat, your version will be a baby cobra. So press the tops of the feet into the mat, and you want to lift just your shoulders and heart off. So everything back here is engaged all through my back. I don't want to be pressing into my hands. So nice and easy, you can bring your fingertips up and flutter them. That's your baby cobra, and that is your back bend in that sequence. If you've done the other variation of chaturanga, where we've landed halfway, we will find upward facing dog. So again, hands are underneath the shoulders. You're gonna press the tops of the feet into the mat so that your legs stay lifted, and then you're gonna let your hips drop. Push your chest forward and a nice proud head. And this is your upward facing dog. So that is the back bend that you would choose if you've done the chaturanga, where you come halfway down. The last posture in a sun salutation A is downward facing dog. And this is where we hold it for 5 breaths, usually 3 to 5, depending on the class and the instructor. And this is where you can use that downward facing dog to recover from that flow. Take your breath nice and slow, make it natural, recover, and then we move on. And also from downward facing dog, at the end of that sequence, you can always bring your knees down and find child's pose. So from our upward facing dog or our cobra, we would move back and find our downward facing dog, however it looks. And from here, if you need to come down, you just bring your knees down, sit back, and there's your child's pose. So it's a nice way to warm up the body, and also because it's so convenient for us to find a resting posture at the end before we cycle through it again. It makes it very gentle and a nice way to warm up the body. Okay, so don't worry, there's not a test, but we'll go through that whole sequence together, and we'll go through the first time nice and slow. I'll explain the transitions. You can always peep up at your screen to watch what I'm doing if you need a visual cue. And then we'll go through it only one more time, and at that point we'll go maybe just a little bit faster so you can see what it feels like to do a Surya Namaskar A like you would in a class. Okay, so we'll meet at the top of our mat. Finding our Tadasana, our mountain pose. So here we are, rooting down through the feet, roll the shoulders up and back, palms face forward, proud chest. Now you're going to take a nice big inhale and bring the arms up overhead. Now on your exhale, you're going to fold forward. You can bring your hands to your hips if you need. Exhale, tilt through the pelvis, folding forward. Find whichever variation you need. On your inhale, you're going to come halfway up. So bring your hands to your shins and then find a flat back. And then on the exhale, you're going to fold again. Place your hands on the mat. So if you need to bend your knees, bend your knees. From here, step back, find your plank pose. Again, it can be either variation. On the exhale, find your chaturanga. On the inhale, find your back bend. So baby cobra or upward facing dog. On the exhale, we'll move back, downward facing dog. Now we're going to take 5 breaths here. So you can hold your downward facing dog, or you can drop the knees, sit back, and find your child's pose. And remember, there's two versions. You can take your knees wide if that feels better. 2 more breaths. Beautiful. Now you're going to look to your hands. On your inhale, you're going to walk your feet forward. Take an inhale, find that flat back. So hands come to the shins. Exhale, you're going to fold. Inhale, you're going to reach your arms overhead and they're going to pull you all the way back up. And then exhale, hands come to prayer at your heart, just like so. And then release them down. Find your Tadasana, your mountain pose. Take a few breaths, recollect, and we'll do that just one more time together. We're going to move a little bit quicker, but it's okay if you need to take longer breaths. Take your time. You don't have to follow me right at the same time. Take a big inhale in and out. Then inhale the arms up overhead. Exhale to fold. Inhale to come halfway up. Exhale, fold. Plant the hands. Step back, find your plank. I'm going to do the modified version now. Exhale to lower down, chaturanga. Inhale up, baby cobra or upward facing dog. Exhale to press back, find your downward facing dog. Take a few breaths here. You're welcome to come down to child's pose. On your next inhale, look to the hands and walk your feet up to the top of your mat. Find your fold. Inhale to find halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale the arms overhead and they pull you all the way up. And exhale, bring your hands to your heart. Release them down by your side. Close the eyes, you're in Tadasana. Take 2 breaths. And then you can flutter your eyes open and find a seat on your mat. Thank you guys so much. I'm very excited that you guys are all here with me on this journey of a 5-day yoga challenge. And I hope that we get to practice again tomorrow, even though it's just virtual. Have a wonderful day. Namaste.